Hello, everyone. This is Shanika Wingfield, and Reggie Wingfield is with me. And this is Wingfield
Hashtag
Ministries
the Wingfields. Wingfield
podcast.
Ministries.
And this episode is going to be about emotions. Time and time again, I always tell people, and Reggie can attest to this. I always tell people I need to teach this, but in a setting that people get it and understand it, because as believers of Jesus Christ, we have to be in control of our emotions, because we can't let the enemy just run away with them. And then for people who are not, believers of Jesus Christ and don't understand that, I have to teach in a way that people kind of understand.
You got to make things practical for people to get it.
Right.
That's the goal. That's the end goal of talking about emotions and how it impacts our decision making, how it impacts every
Everything.
facet of our lives. Right. So, I think this is going to be very informative, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people can probably relate to the fact that they've probably done something crazy during a moment of in an emotional what's the word I can
Emotional state.
yeah, when you're overwhelmed by emotion, think about a time you have made a bad decision. If you were clear-headed, had an opportunity to kind of process through it, would your decision have changed in that
Yeah,
moment?
absolutely. So, just for those who haven't joined us before, we do our podcast on the move. So if you hear certain things in the car, that's why. Because a lot of this podcast birthed out of the vehicle. The Lord told us to do this many years ago. I'm not gonna say when. And because there's so many great conversations that we have in this car that people really just need to be a part of. And that's how this thing came up. But on today, it was just like I said something to a lady, and I was like, you cannot be ran by emotions. You cannot be hijacked by emotions. And people can emotionally manipulate you in all kinds of settings. And you have to be discerning to, excuse me, to know when that's happening. We tell our kids all the time, you're not going to emotionally manipulate me. You're just not going to do it, because you're not going to get what you want by crying or having a fit or huffing and puffing. It just doesn't work like that. And so with that, I'm going to share, I'm not going to say the person's name, but and it's not, shade with anyone, but it's just the truth. Many years ago, Reggie, if you remember, there was a certain person who, every time I would be around them, my emotions would not necessarily connect. That's the best way. I really don't want to have like no any new age type of language gathered in this podcast or in this podcast, but my emotions would be moved based on the emotions that they had. And so I know, like, new age language and verbiage is like they're empaths or whatever that stuff they come up with. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just having clear emotions that God has given us. He has created all of us. He has created all of us to have emotions, but our emotions cannot rule us, and we cannot be manipulated into certain emotions based on people's behaviors, opinions, or state of beings. And this particular person, whatever state of being they were in, my emotions, like unbeknownst to me at the time, would move based on them. So if they were in a sad state, for example, then I'm over there, I'm happy go lucky, bubbly, and then I get over there and now I'm sad. Or they're upset, now I'm upset. And it was, at first it was really like, just I wasn't really aware of it until I think you said something to me, right? Did you say something to me?
Always
I can't even remember what you said. Do you remember what you said?
bring awareness to you. Bring awareness to the fact that certain things are happening, or your mood changes, or
Yeah, I think you said something like that. Like, do you realize that your mood changed every time you're around them? And not to make this churchy, but you have to know what demonic systems people are dealing with, and you have to be aware of how that affects you. And so I always try to teach, as a prophet of God, I always try to teach other prophets, particularly, not to be swayed by your emotions, and have a healthy boundary of disconnect. This is what I always say I need to teach, but I don't really know how to teach it. And so I believe that the best way to do it is just have a conversation about it. You have to disconnect your emotional state, your emotions, away from people when you're releasing a judgmental, word, a word of correction, a word of warning. You can't have your opinions involved in these things. When thus said the Lord, he just says it, and that's it. I can't come then put my emotions on what was said, and then because then I'm moved by it, right? You're moved by your emotions and your opinion of such. I have to strictly say what God says and then stay there. So when you're releasing these type of words, or heck, when God is giving you these type of words, you can't be emotional. You can't run on emotions. You can't, it's just, that's just the best way that I can say it, is that you can't be ran on emotions, because you will miss a lot of things, and you will get caught up in a lot of things that are unnecessary. You get emotionally connected with people. You get emotionally connected with their families, and you start to disregard what God is showing you about them. You disregard what God is saying about them that can be detrimental to your own life. And that's when those emotions have completely hijacked you. And even when I was talking this morning, the lady said, I've been bewitched because of the emotions. And I was like, yeah. And nobody could tell you that you were being bewitched, because those were your real emotions that you felt, you know?
I think it's important to note that, to that point, you cannot be, you have to be aware. We've been having a lot of self-awareness
Yeah.
is one of the main things that we can do for ourselves in order to be aware. And, I read something, and I want to read something to bring even further clarity to this conversation. Emotional intelligence is defined as the ability to manage both your own emotions and understand the emotions of people around you. Then it further goes on to talk about 5 key elements to the emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills.
What?
You have to be completely detached. Otherwise, you will be overtaken by somebody else's
Yep.
situation. I say it like this: I would, if I had to teach this in a room full of 1 million people, I would say you have to be able to disseminate or present the material unfiltered, unbothered, and in an objective manner.
Right. That's it. It has to be unfiltered. It has to be completely raw, with love, but detached.
Yes. And so many people don't have the skill set to do that.
Oh God, no.
People have a personal investment, if you will, to the emotional piece of whatever the situation may call for, right? For instance, if a person, you're talking to a friend, you should be invested when talking to a friend, but there should be a level of separation. Without that level of separation, then you're biased, and then you're unable to provide an objective point of view or an objective stance regarding the matter. And normally, and what helps people, because I feel like we're counselors by nature, what normally helps people bring self-awareness is to present it in a question form. Well, have you ever considered this?
Yeah.
Right? You ask them a question, and typically it's an open-ended question that will engage more thought-provoking processes so that you can really engage them on a deeper level. So that is a skill set that everybody does not have, but I feel like people can learn how to do it.
But this is the thing, though, Reggie. It has to come from somebody who has emotional intelligence, because and without saying names, we know leaders who had no emotional intelligence and was trying to teach emotional intelligence, and it failed miserably. You doing the face palm emoji.
That's like an eagle that doesn't have no wings, but gonna teach you how to fly.
An eagle has wings. What did you?
Right? No. What, to your point, you're saying that people, this person was trying to teach emotional intelligence and had none. That's like an eagle trying to teach somebody how to fly without wings.
Right.
There we
go. Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
But it's clear, and it was comical. And then I said that you cannot teach emotional intelligence unless you have mastered it, right? And because you have to master and manage your own emotions before you can teach somebody how to do it. And as long as we've had children, like you said, we have been academically taught how to do this, as well as spiritually taught how to do this, right? So we teach our children, you're going to manage your emotions. Is this a reason to cry? Is this a reason to be upset? Let's talk about what you're feeling so you can put into a category where you are, because everything doesn't require tears. Everything doesn't require anger. Everything doesn't require being upset. You have to know in the moment what is an acceptable emotion to have. And that's how you manage emotions. But I think, on the natural side, like we talked about earlier, is that boys particularly are not taught to even have emotions. And then young girls are not taught to manage their emotions. And so I feel like boys have lost it, or it's two strikes against them, right? They're not taught to even touch their emotions or operate in their emotions. And the second one, they're not taught to manage them. And girls are taught it's okay for you to have emotions, but then they're not taught to manage them. Like, share with what you said growing up with your emotions, what your uncles and cousins and fathers and all them said to you.
Well, to that point, I think you see two extremes going here, as you've so beautifully articulated. Emphasis on
Here
beautiful.
We go.
It wouldn't be me if I did not compliment this sexy thing sitting right next to me.
Sexy.
My God, I digress. However, y'all gonna have to get used to that, because
Right.
Every once in a while I might have a moment, because you don't get to see all of this fineness and beautifulness that I see every single day. But I digress again.
Okay.
So I see two extremes at work here. You mentioned that boys are taught to suppress their emotions, and girls are taught to be overly emotional, right?
Without managing them.
Without
Yep.
proper managing, right? So I see
the dichotomy.
I see the two extremes.
Yeah.
One with the men not having it at all, and the girls having it but being overly overboard with it, by not properly managing it. That fine balance, right? So there's a fine line. So to that point, interestingly enough, I can definitely concur with that statement, because growing up, being raised, the men in my life, they had this school of thought that men should not cry. I tell this story all of the time, right? And I saw it unfold at a very young age. Men, when if my sister were to get hurt, then it would have been instantaneous. It would be instantaneously that they would get rendered the proper safety, care, and security. Whereas as a man, as a young boy, it was perpetuated masculinity to, boy, you're all right. I can get up, shake it off. Like it is such foolishness that was really being perpetuated in my family and my bloodline. And I said that when I become a father, I'm not going to adopt this thought process.
That boys
cannot have emotions. So what am I saying?
Right.
If you're taught to suppress your emotions, not deal with them at all, right? I just
anger and violence is okay for boys.
Right. And so I just articulated the extreme of two, right? So I'm touching on right now how my upbringing impacted my thought processes as it relates to emotions. So boy, get up, don't cry. Don't I bleed and have cells and don't my brain in pain, and don't my brain send signals when something's off and something is wrong, right? So that's part of, I believe that I can speak to men in that regard, because that was my personal experience.
And then also for women, we are saying, so even like I said with young girls, and I can see how it's perpetuated when the young girls are getting older, as far as even having their menstrual cycles. How many videos, TikTok shorts that you see with husbands saying, oh, my wife is on her cycle again, here's all this, she's even emotional wreck. And then on the other end of that, you have women who's like, I'm on my cycle, so I have all rights and privileges to be emotional and do whatever I want to. And I'm like, no, that's not how, I know we live in a society which tells you can do whatever you want to, right? And it's just not, it's not I can't even get it out. It's just not the truth. Yes, you can do whatever you want to do, but no, you can't do whatever you want to. Even, for our own child, like, if you're having hormones that you may not be able to understand what you're feeling and going through, it doesn't give you the right to yell. It doesn't give you the right to talk crazy to people. You have to manage that. You have to say, what's going on in my body? Why am I feeling this way? And let me make sure I don't take it out on other people. That seems like a very mature thing, right? But since you're not ever taught that, it seems like it's almost unreachable as an adult.
Right, and I think so. You spoke to the point of trying to help the people manage this thing. We have a 13-year-old, and I hold her to the expectation is if something is going on biologically that is beyond her control, psychologically that's beyond her control, hormonal that's beyond her control, we help her navigate those things in a healthy way. I think, again, as my wife has been saying, society has taught us, these things are going on in my body. You're going to take the negative and the most extreme approach. And again, that's not teaching you how to manage it, right? The goal of this podcast, when it opened up, is teaching you how to manage your emotions and not being emotionally driven by things and situations. It's going to render failure every single time.
It is.
So we have a duty and we have an obligation to teach our own children. No, my mother and father taught us, hey, to communicate. Hey, I don't know what's going on with my body. My body is changing. I'm having back cramps and different things like that. Now, so let me bring some balance to this thing. I'm not saying, now I'm not a woman and I don't know, thank God, I'm not a woman, because you couldn't pay me to have anybody's baby. Biologically and physically, that's an impossible feat anyway. But my point is, I'm making the point to let people know that there are different things that does go on during an administration, right? Or a monthly flow or cycle, that you have to be aware of. Now, emotional intelligence, I just explained, it requires self-awareness.
Yes.
I know what's going on with me. Listen, people around you should not get the brunt
of the
manifestations of what's going on with you before you get it.
Can all adults get this? Because I think that's a lot of conflict you deal even in the workplace, in schools, is because people don't know how to manage emotions. Case in point, I was in the airport and there was a lady who was standing on business. She was like, can y'all not walk over here? I just mopped the floor. We don't have enough, floor is wet sign. We don't have enough, so I'm standing here. No problem. I just went around the pillar and went a different way. But the lady behind me, who does not have emotional intelligence nor maturity, got into her feelings, started cussing this lady out, tried to make a big scene. She was like, oh my gosh, she's hitting me. And we all just standing around shaking our head because none of that happened. It was perceived. This lady was delusional. None of that happened, but she did not have emotional intelligence to say, this lady is trying to keep her floor clean and the people in the airport safe from falling. So I should just do what she asked me to do.
But people who lack emotional intelligence or who does not have the proper training and the skill set to manage emotions would always operate in that extreme.
My goodness.
That's a clear indication.
Everything's a fight.
Right. That's a clear indication that the person lacks emotional intelligence or has no clue as to what that looks like or how to navigate through emotional challenges.
Yeah, or emotional state. We're always in an emotional state. Something is always going on emotionally, right? You're tired. You can be upset. You can be grieving. I'm
not my best Reggie when I'm sleepy and tired. I am self-aware. We laugh and we joke about it in my family.
But we are aware.
But I am aware. I'm like, baby, you know what? I don't want to have a conversation with you when I'm tired. I have to communicate that to my spouse and the people that I love and the people that we're doing life with.
Yeah.
So if I had to teach how to manage it.
Right. Because you even tell the kids that. And we were like, Daddy's tired, leave him alone. And they'd be like, okay, yes, Daddy, I'll talk to you later. Or Mama, can you help me with A, B, and C? And it's not that we walk on eggshells, but we respect where you are in the moment.
Right. If I'm communicating, I don't have the
bandwidth.
The bandwidth. Oh, we love that's been our term, right?
Right.
If I'm communicating that I don't have the bandwidth to have a conversation, my family understands that they give Daddy that safe place and that space to be able to do that. With the expectation at some point we should revisit that conversation when I do have the bandwidth to manage it, right? To handle it.
Yeah, because we just don't walk over it. Like if Daddy needs to go take a nap for an hour, let him go take a nap, and then he come back, he's refreshed, he's fine.
Right.
It's nothing that we are moved by. Is that the best way to say it?
Right.
We're not controlled by it, you know.
And now, if we could teach this on the workplace and workplace, and in families,
we need to go do this in training.
Lord, we can travel the world.
Contact us. We'll train your staff on emotional intelligence.
Step 1, self-awareness.
Right.
I am tired. I just got some bad news.
Right. Give me a moment.
Listen, I need my moment. I can't have this conversation with you. So step 1 is to communicate where you are. But in order to communicate where you are, that means that you have to have some level of self-awareness.
I was just about to say, and even this is culturally based too, because a lot of times in Black African American cultures, we are taught at a young age that children have no feelings, that children have no opinions, no emotions, and that everything is ran by the adult, right? Because I was about to say, even TJ at 7 will say, Mama, can you give me a moment, right? He will say that because we've taught him, we've given him the space to say that. And I'm like, okay, have your moment.
Right, and it's funny because that checks you.
Oh, 100%.
And it brings you into a place of alignment with like, oh my God, if my 7-year-old can articulate this, why can't I do better in this area?
Right, or anybody, like even little Reggie. Little Reggie was, I feel like, in an emotional state. This was a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week. In an emotional state that was unnecessary. He should have been managing his emotions better than that. I didn't say anything, but then he came up to me and said, Mama, can I have a moment? Can I go into my room and get myself together? And I said, okay. And then he came back downstairs. He said, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been that upset. It didn't even take all that. So he used the skills that we taught him.
10-year-old.
10.
If I can teach a 10-year-old, surely I can teach a 30-year-old.
Well, if I can 30-year-olds,
if I can teach a 10-year-old, surely I can teach a 50-year-old.
I mean, that means they will have to erase everything that they've been taught and then start from here. It's possible. It's going to take some work because people are caught up in their emotions, and it runs every aspect of their life.
Absolutely.
It's mind-boggling to me the how emotional people are. And then, like, just to throw the Bible into this, the best example, and I believe there's 2 examples that I believe everybody who just know Bible stories would know. One thing is Samuel and Saul. Remember when Samuel is, the one who ordained Saul, right, to be king. And then Saul did whatever he wanted, and then the kingdom was snatched. And then Samuel was in an emotional state. He was mourning. He was overly mourning for Saul because the Lord had to say to him, how long will you mourn for Saul, right? Mourning, grief is an emotion. Absolutely. So he had to snatch Samuel out of that state. He's basically telling Samuel, now manage your emotions. I already took the kingdom from him.
Get it together.
Get it together. Now go ordain the next king.
You ain't got time to be sitting there. Suck it up, Buttercup.
Suck it up, Buttercup. Right.
Suck up them tears.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Suck them tears up. And then also, like David with Saul. Now David could have killed Saul on his emotions, right? He could have retaliated based on everything Saul was doing to him. But we see a whole story of David fleeing from Saul, but managing his emotions. And then on the flip side, you see David have emotions towards Jonathan, Saul's son. They have a loving relationship, a loving brotherly relationship. So you can see emotions throughout the Bible. Another one that I thought was so was Job with his friends. That was a highly emotional state. Job lost everything, right? His wife is telling him, curse your God. His friends are coming here talking out the side of their neck. And Job was emotionally attacked in a lot of situations. In a lot of situations, he, overly stated his emotions about God. And what God said to him, where was you when I flung the stars in the sky? So it's like in all of these stories in the Bible, you can see how emotions were there, how emotions were managed, and then if they weren't managed, how God got them together.
If Job had not been in a great place emotionally, he probably would have collaborated with his wife. He
Oh
probably
my
would have
gosh.
agreed with his wife.
Can you imagine that?
And now we already know listen, I don't even want to talk about what probably would have happened. But the fact that he had great emotional intelligence, even though it was a tough situation and he was dealt with a lot of different things at his back to things on his plate. Trying not to start preaching. You have to understand that will be enough to overwhelm any person.
Oh yeah.
He lost all of his family. He lost his wife. He lost his wealth. Brother, listen. I know what it feels like to have a little bit, or barely enough, right?
Right.
So that alone could impact your emotional state.
Oh yeah.
And make you make some poor decisions, right? We're looking for the quick. How can I get a quick buck? May not be. It's 1,000% interest. You can get a quick $500 or a quick $1,000, but at what cost?
Right.
And so I think it's worthy to note in this episode, in this first introductory episode, that emotional intelligence is paramount. It's important. Also, what I want to reflect and capture in this episode is the fact that we all have emotions. God created us this way.
And you have to understand, like, some of the questions you need to ask yourself is what are emotions? What am I feeling in this particular situation? What does managing my emotions look like? How is that accomplished? One more example from just the Bible that I thought was really good that the Lord brought to my spirit was Mordecai and Haman. Like, Mordecai did not agree with Haman. Haman hated Mordecai, but you don't see that rift in Mordecai. You don't see strife. You don't see vengeance. You don't see any of those things. Mordecai walked around with such a confidence in God that he didn't let the hatred from Haman dictate how he moved in that country, that city. You see what I mean? And then if we can get there, we'll be good to go. But we just have to get there. So I'm going to wrap this up because I don't think our episode should be that long. I want these to be thought-provoking, conversations. Like, what are my emotions? Am I managing them? Am I perpetuating what I was taught that wasn't healthy with my young boys or young girls? Am I acting irrational, delusional? Are my perceptions false on what's going on? All those things have your emotion wrapped up. Am I emotionally manipulating other people to get what I want or to feel what I feel? Like, you have to ask yourself all these things, and I believe we probably should have a part 2 on this. I want you guys to tell us, is there something else you want to discuss regarding emotions? And if this has helped you, let us know, and we'll talk about this again. Anything else?
No, that'll be it. Don't be driven by your emotions, but drive your emotions with balance of emotional intelligence.
That's it. Y'all have a good one.